Yes, here we go. Saddle up, pilgrims. It's another Sunday morning here on the Spice Isle, the 17th day, February 2019. Thank you very much for joining us for today's edition of, what do you call it? Sundays with George Grant? Something like that. Nice to see you folks awake and about this morning. You're still behind us, 1 hour, but hey, we're glad that you're here. Another interesting program this morning. We're going to be kept pretty busy. And when it's all over and done with, I hope that you'll sit back and say, yeah, I was informed, I was entertained, and I'm a better person for having taken the time to join George and his friends this morning. Thank you so much for coming. Let's take a look at the rundown and see what we got cooking for the next 3 hours, and then we'll hop on over there to Facebook and Rumble Chat. I see Rumble Chat's already active this morning. Facebook takes them a little while to put on their makeup and all that stuff. Yeah. As always, we will begin with the buzz, and we do have a reading for you from the Holy Scriptures. And then we jump right into the editorials. Once again, we've got two for you. The Grenada Advocate is captioned, "Time to Foster Regional Ingenuity." What's that about? You're not going to have to wait too much longer. Find out in just a wee bit. And then, the New Today is captioned, "Public inquiry, please." They're calling for a public inquiry. I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. You're going to have to wait and find out. As far as interviews are concerned this morning, we have just one interview this morning. It is captioned, "Addressing the Spate of Road Fatalities on Grenadian Roads." There's a gentleman by the name of Rod Charles. He's a specialist investigator, retired from the London Metropolitan Police Force. And he sent me an email a couple of weeks ago and was very concerned about all the accidents he'd been hearing on this little island. Grave concern to him. And he mentioned to me that he was coming to Grenada. So I said, okay, when you get here, give me a ding and let's talk about it. Well, I was delighted this past week when I actually heard from him. And he's going to be in here this morning. I think he lives somewhere in the north of the island, so he's probably on his way here right now. His name is Rod Charles. Yes, sirree. We're going to be talking with Mr. Rod Charles. And that will be our only interview this morning. Now, what else is cooking? 2 main features this morning. Many of you probably know that the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, I should say the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, they held a meeting this past week. And at the end of the meeting, there was a press conference which was attended by the local media. And the guests were Prime Minister Keith Mitchell, our Prime Minister, Prime Minister Timothy Harris, Prime Minister of St. Kitts, Nevis, and Governor Timothy Antoine of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Now, normally that type of stuff does not find its way into this program. But I sat and I watched that press conference. And I realized that, hey, although this is not necessarily a Grenada thing, there are a lot of things that they're talking about that would resonate right here in Grenada. So I sat down and I chopped it up into bits and pieces. And we're going to play those bits and pieces for you this morning. I would like to suggest that you be very attentive when you listen this morning, because there are a lot of very interesting things that were said. Go ahead, George, tease them. Don't tell them what, just tease them. Yeah, hang in there. The other feature we're going to play for you this morning, I think this is a nice way to wrap up the program. You know, every Thursday morning, we have a buddy, Mr. Allan Bierzynski, join us on Good Day Grenada. And when Allan bungs away, everybody walks away with a smile on their face. Well, this past Thursday was absolutely no exception. And I thought, you know, hey, let's share some of this, because a lot of you are at work during the week. You know, what was it, 9:30 on a Thursday morning? A lot of you trying to make a little penny halfpenny here and there. You don't have time to watch or listen. So I thought we will rerun that piece we did with Allan this past Thursday. Now, the thing that makes this guy so interesting is that he always, and I mean always, raises very salient points. But he does so with tons of sarcastic humor. Straight face. He looks right into that camera, man, and he says what's on his mind. He gets it right off his chest. That's the stuff I like. Dealing with serious issues, but in a lighthearted way. You know, we have enough in this world to worry about. And while we need to take those issues seriously, that's always nice when you can smile. You will this morning, those of you who hang around to the end. And that's all of you, right? Okay. Now, let me start saying good morning to some of the folks who are with us. I see that on Rumble Chat, Kipling saying good morning and sending God's blessings to all. And he says, I wish most of us would stop accepting edited news as facts and do some more research before repeating. Sound advice, Kipling. He says, gone are the days of fair and honest reporting. Maybe. Please think. Don't believe everything you hear. That I agree with. That I agree with. And folks, you got to keep your eyes open. He's right. He's right. You got to keep your eyes open. There's a lot of stuff out there. And while it's very prominent on social media, it's not just social media. It's everywhere. You hear statements being made publicly, and then a couple of weeks later, you hear something different about the same issue, and you say to yourself, hey, wait a minute. Didn't I hear? You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, so much for Kipling. Thanks, Kipling. And Dennis says, good morning. It's another lovely day here in Carriacou after some much-needed rain yesterday. Rain, Dennis? You guys had rain yesterday? Wait a minute, wait a minute. I can't tell you the last time I've seen rain down here. I was thinking about that just last night. No rain. Everything's very parched. And usually, Carriacou is the place that, you know, like a rock, parched. Well, congratulations. I'm glad you had some rain. I see that Peter is also out there on Rumble Chat. He hasn't said anything yet. So is Penny. Hello, Penny. And Let's turn over here now let's turn to Facebook. Ah, now I see why Peter hasn't said anything on Rumble Chat. It's because he is on Facebook. He's saying good morning from Brooklyn. Back in Brooklyn, eh? Kipling is saying, please don't forget, share so that others will join. Well, thank you very much. Man, I have two staff members who very much on the ball. Kipling and Mags. I haven't seen Mags yet this morning, but imagine she'll show up later. They're always reminding the folks to like and share. And I certainly hope you do take their advice. Help us along. Bernard Gilbert, and by the way, those are just two of my staff members. Here's my, can you see this? It's my third staff member who was introduced last week. His name is, I always have to check his heirs to find out his name, Kelly. And Kelly was born on December 19th, 2017. There you go, Kelly. Now, what else? Bernard Gilbert is saying good morning to all. And Ella Mae Jackson, hello. Girl, I'm seeing lots of you these days. We're honored to have you with us. Thank you so much. Kathleen Thomas is saying good morning from Toronto. She's got her coffee and she's ready. She's ready for her Sunday fix. Well, guess what, Kathleen? I'm a big coffee drinker. Have been a big coffee drinker. But I made a pledge that as soon as I'm through with that big jar of coffee that I have, I'm going to stop drinking coffee, at least try for a while, okay? Well, guess what? This happened to be the morning, just the morning you come here talking about coffee. This happens to be the morning that I decided, well, last night, I think I left just about half a teaspoon of coffee in that jar. With effect from this morning, Georgie Porgy has his, the right one? Oops, wrong cup, wrong cup. But this is not filled with coffee. This is filled with cinnamon tea. Margaret, I imagine that you'd be very happy to hear that I kept my word. Cinnamon tea. There you go. Just boiled some cinnamon this morning. Good stuff. I like that stuff. Oswin Lewis is saying good morning, and so is Yvonne Joseph. Devon Phillip is saying good morning, everyone, and a special blessing to George. Thank you so much, sir. I do wish you and your dear family the same. He says he's listening and learning. Devon, okay, good. Yvonne Joseph says, how many good mornings are you going to say? Yvonne. Up top she said good morning, good morning, George and friends, and now she's saying, good morning, George and friends, from a cold Oshawa. Oshawa, so that's where you are. I remember that little town very well. When I was learning to fly, spent a lot of time flying into that little Oshawa airport. Still open? Nice little airport back at the time. I don't know, I imagine it's really developed now. Just the same thing happened with Toronto Island. Toronto Island was a teeny-weeny little airport. Now it's a pretty darn commercialized airport. Has the people in downtown Toronto a little bit up in arms about the noise. Lincoln, hello there, Lincoln. He's saying good morning and wishing everybody a blessed day as well. He says, be positive and enjoy life. Love, laugh, and praise the Lord. Yaman. Absolutely. Just before going on the air here a few minutes ago, I sat, had a little conversation with him. As always, most important person in my life. Margaret, there she is. Margaret ain't saying a word this morning, but she's well, good morning to you, Margaret. Nice to see you. And finally, Jackie Williamson. Hey, Jackie, what's on the menu for brekkie this morning? I got some smoke herring or sulphur sauce, or if you got smoke herring, keep it away from market, please, please. Okay, folks, so that's going to do it. Let us take our first little break here. It's 15 minutes after 9 o'clock, and we'll come right on back and get started with this week's edition of The Buzz.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank. And there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Okie doke, at 18 and a half minutes after 9 o'clock, let's get into this week's edition of The Buzz, and we begin with reading from Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 5 to 8. Cursed is the one who trusts in man, who draws strength from mere flesh, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. That person will be like a bush in the wastelands. He will not see prosperity when it comes. He will dwell in the parched places in the desert, in a salt land where no one lives. But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought, and never fails to bear fruit. Make you feel better? Sure hope it did. Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 5 to 8. As he makes himself a little bit more comfortable here. Hey. A couple more people are coming online here on Facebook this morning. Mickaman Alexander says good morning. He's looking forward to a great program. Well, we'll do the best we can, Mickaman. And Lawrence Kruthoff, by the way, Lawrence, I want to take a moment here to extend congratulations to you and your daughter. Saw something on Facebook this past week where his daughter has graduated and her dad is standing at her side, and she was holding her diploma. I'm not sure, and graduated from where or what, but it's an accomplishment, and I salute both your daughter and the work that you have done in bringing her to the stage. Congratulations to both of you. Here he says, good morning to you, Mr. George. Hey, just George, or Geo Bear if you want to get fresh. Yeah, Geo Bear, that's what some people call me. GG. He says, thank you for your congratulations for my daughter. The achievement on Facebook. Yeah, congratulations, sir. Rumble chat, Facebook. Take care of that for the time being. Okay. Let's get to this week's contribution from Little Angel. Will make you stop and think. She usually does. She says, impunity is an exemption from punishment, and it is obvious why it has been identified as one of the obstacles to the rule of law. When crimes and perpetrators of crimes go unpunished and justice cannot be obtained through an established judicial system, there is no doubt that the law cannot take its course. This is why nurturing conditions for respect for the rule of law is becoming more and more necessary in today's world, as it experiences a growing popularity of authoritarian rule and abuse of power. Impunity is the freedom which most world leaders enjoy while in power. Some of them enjoy absolute immunity for any act committed during office and after leaving office. It is also common for leaders to enjoy immunity from criminal prosecution, except in cases of treason or another grave crime. Due to the fact that leaders are immune from prosecution, impunity is said to also foster corruption. The liberties which impunity bestows on office holders make corruption rife, and offenders will do all that is necessary in order to remain in office. If there is no chance of being made to account for wrongdoing while in office, why do what is right? And, having done wrong, why leave? The number of humanitarian crises to which the world's population is currently being subjected is sufficient for a revision of impunity laws, and in some cases, for their total abolishment. Slavery existed in the world when conditions were conducive to the slave trade. Impunity is no different. Laws are enacted because there is a need to do so. And when there is a need, they should be abolished as well. The world and its people have changed, and so should laws. Let impunity be no more. Thank you, little angel. Everybody out there heard that? Thank you, little angel. Hope they're listening. Back to Facebook. Hey, hey, hey. Patricia St. Paul Williams is sending a purple heart. Hello, Patricia. Thank you. Not sure what the purple heart means, but thank you very much. Ernesto Jose says, good morning, Principal Grant, students or pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of Education Sunday. I'm up and ready. Got your sleeves rolled up, eh? Yeah? Augustine Lewis and Glenn Andrew Mark are saying good morning. And Lennox Adonis is saying good morning, George. Not hearing you on TuneIn. Uh-oh. Well, that problem seems to persist, doesn't it? At least I certainly hope that since I'm seeing you here on Facebook, you are seeing and hearing us on Facebook. We'll take a look at that, Adonis. Thank you. Ryan is saying good morning, George and class. Good streaming. Yeah, boy, Ryan, I tell you, we have so much to be thankful for. After what we went through between, when was it? Between the end of April and the end of December, just before Christmas. We had a rotten ride, didn't we? But you know what? I am so blessed that you folks stuck with us through thick and thin. And here we are. Digicel has done a wonderful job getting the stream out. I mean, I'm looking at this thing here. I'm seeing absolutely not a beep, not a blip, nothing. It's just all green all the way. Keep our pinkies crossed. You know, in the past, whenever we talked about the good things that were happening, suddenly, beep. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Thank you very much. Brandon Lewis is saying, good morning, New York City in the house. Yeah, man. Hello, Brandon. Good to see you. Folks, time for another break. We'll come back.
With free island-wide delivery, Hubbard's Building Supplies and Lumber Departments continue to provide the best quality lumber, steel, tiles, plumbing materials, electrical, and general hardware supplies at competitive prices. We continually consult with builders, homeowners, and contractors to improve product range and services. Enjoy discounts where applicable, including the use of credit and debit cards. At Hubbard's Building Supplies, Grandans, and Lumber Department, Caranage, we offer quality service, affordable prices, giving you the convenient, reliable, free island-wide delivery. Call 440-2087 for all your home improvement and building solutions.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Speyside.
Redleg, energizing our Grenada.
Well, I see that we've now been joined on Rumble Chat by Chester, who's saying good morning. Chester, good to see you, bro. Keep well. Pilgrims, it's 9:30 and a half. Let's get into this weekend's editorials, and we begin with the editorial which appeared this past week in the Grenada Advocate. It is captioned, "Time to foster regional ingenuity." In recent times, innovation and ingenuity are required to kickstart projects and drive momentum. Fitting in with the theme is the Consumer Electronics Show, which took place in Las Vegas between January 8th and 11th of this year. The show itself has been around for over 50 years and acts as a showcase for up-and-coming innovative technologies that are displayed to thousands of patrons. Indeed, previous CES shows played host to items that would go on to become well-used household products, including VCRs, CDs, DVDs, tablets, Android systems, and so on. How does this apply to Grenada, and by extension, the Caribbean? Simply put, it is time to follow through on the enormous potential this region has and exhibits in so many different ways. Our musical and cultural renderings show that we are masters of entertainment ingenuity. But it is a shame that, for whatever reasons, we have not pushed for the invention of solutions that are sustainable for the problems we face. For example, how we, as small island developing states, weather climate change and storm systems, how we adjust to the realities of annual sargassum inflows, which could potentially affect our tourism product, and most importantly, the many ways we can be using the natural solar energy available to us year-round to power our homes, schools, and businesses. We know that some states, for a few years now, have been pushing STEM, S-T-E-M, education, and small exhibitions or competitions to nurture the creativity found in these fields. But it will require an outreach to those who may not excel in traditional academics or are currently studying. In addition, private capital is needed to help encourage prize monies, investment, and training to boost such programs. We are reminded that creativity is found all around us and is just waiting for the right vehicle through which to showcase it. Recently, the Royal Academy of Engineering, Africa, shortlisted 16 candidates from sub-Saharan Africa in a competition that accepts entries from engineers who use their talents to develop answers to local problems. The 2018 winner, Brian Gita from Uganda, came up with the idea of matibabu. It's a Swahili word meaning medical center, which is an inexpensive tool that tests for malaria without drawing blood and requires no specialized knowledge to use. Shortlisted candidates are also exposed to 8 months of training and mentoring before a winner is chosen from the finalists. The 2019 shortlisted candidates are equally as innovative. One entrant designed smart gloves that convert signed language to audio Another created a system that uses special gels to capture water from the air to convert to drinking water. As keen as it is to watch other international spectacles and the debut of the next best thing, we believe now is the time to foster this regional ingenuity. Reach out to persons from all walks of life, those who may be self-taught, those who are keen and interested, and start creating for the benefit of our Caribbean societies. That is the editorial which appeared in this past Wednesday's edition of the Grenada Advocate. I've been hearing a little beep, 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 beep here, which means that folks are posting stuff there. Ryan says, God is good. Yeah, Ryan. Ernesto Jose says, Principal Grant, I would like to ask you a favor for me and other listeners to invite Lou Smith on your Sunday program because he is missing in action and lots of tight lips around. Well, I'll tell you, Ernesto, good point. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I have tried to get Lou here. One day this week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday this week, he did drop by here and we had a nice little chat. I actually wanted him to be on the air with me, but he said to me that his lawyer has advised him to not do so right now. Apparently, it seems to me that maybe some sort of legal action may be contemplated. I'm not sure. But his lawyer has asked him to hold off on making any public statements for the time being. So it's not from lack of asking. I'm anxious to have Louis come and sit here. Okay? Okay. He says, no one seems to know. Burgess McPhee says, greetings, sir. L.B. Quacko. Greetings, sir. L.B. Quacko. Okay. I don't get it. Anyhow. Ernesto goes on to say the network's lips are zipped. All right, folks, tell you what, let's go have another little break here, and then we'll come on back with the editorial from The New Today. All right, so a little while ago, somebody here by the name of Burgess McPhee said, "Greetings, sir, LB Quacko." And I said, what does that mean? I didn't really understand. Well, there is a note from Tessa Barry, Tessa is in Trinidad, and she's saying good morning to everybody. And then she explains here that it's Calypsonian Quacko. Hello, Calypsonian Quacko. Looking forward to meeting you one of these days, and thank you very much for joining us on today's edition of Sundays with George Grant. Then Brandon Lewis, not sure where Brandon is, but he says we need more vocational and skills training institutions to help create skill jobs and trade for the future generation. And here's a note from Ryan. Ryan is saying, nice shoes. Whose feet are you looking at, Ryan? Ryan is out there in Orlando. You got me on that one, Ryan. Anyhow, let's get into the editorial which appeared this past week in the New Today. It is captioned, "Public Inquiry, Please." The New Today is not surprised at the decision by former Chief Executive Officer of the Marketing and National Importing Board, Rule Edwards, to approach the High Court to get an order to stay the so-called inquiry being launched by the Integrity Commission into alleged wrongdoing and questionable dealings at the state body during his tenure in office. This newspaper had advocated from day one that the proper, legal, and correct channel to handle the M&IB issue is the Public Inquiry Act as set out by law. Mr. Edwards' lawyer, former Attorney General Cajetan Hood, is quite rightly now asking the High Court to call on the Integrity Commission, headed by female attorney-at-law Anande Trotman Joseph, to show where in the law it has the authority to conduct such an exercise. It was always a strange decision taken by the Commission to announce that it will do the inquiry when Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Dr. Keith Mitchell, had told the nation weeks earlier that he was setting up a public inquiry into the M&IB saga. It should be noted that the inquiry to be done in private and behind closed doors without the public getting to hear firsthand the evidence of the persons being called to give evidence. Prime Minister Mitchell is considered as a key and crucial witness, as he is the line minister for the M&IB, and stated publicly that he was not aware of the financial predicament of the state body under Mr. Edwards' stewardship prior to him taking up a new job at the Ministry of Finance. The Prime Minister also told Grenadians that the things that were eventually discovered at the M&IB are quite frightening, without going into details. Quite frankly, many persons in Grenada were anxiously awaiting on Dr. Mitchell to take to the stand at the public inquiry to give full details of the alarming things that were found at the state body. It's already in the public domain that a foreign supplier of sugar had taken court action against the M&IB for nearly $1 million EC dollars owed to it, and that a local lawyer had obtained a court order to levy the money against the funds of the central government. The public also heard about the spending spree by the marketing board to purchase over $350,000 and first-class tickets for overseas travel, mainly by its CEO to Miami. It is also public knowledge that Mr. Edwards has written to the Prime Minister requesting him to withdraw a number of statements that he made, which more or less put him in a bad light in the public domain because they were not true. The former MNIB CEO indicated that he had met with Dr. Mitchell on several occasions and also sent reports about the MNIB predicament, which should have been taken to Cabinet for discussion and for decisions to be taken on those matters. Public inquiry, please. The public is quite naturally being denied the opportunity by the Trotman-Joseph mounted inquiry to hear both sides and to determine for themselves who is really at fault. There is also the evidence to be given by former chairman of the board of directors of the MNIB, Samuel Andrew, who was alleging that he had tried for months to get a meeting with Prime Minister Mitchell to bring to his attention matters relating to the state body, but was not able to get an audience. It raises serious questions as to whether the 72-year-old aging Prime Minister was too occupied with other matters of state and had little or no time to perform the role of line minister for MNIB. Mr. Andrew has since resigned as a member of the ruling New National Party of the Prime Minister. Can he now be expected to speak the truth and nothing but the truth, since he's no longer obligated to be careful in releasing information of a particular nature that can hurt the image of the Prime Minister and the party in the eyes of Grenadians? However, the focus is now on the court action taken by Mr. Edwards to move the High Court to stay the MNIB inquiry pending the outcome of certain relief that he is seeking through Attorney Cashton Hood. The Integrity Commission is not known to be clothed with laws similar to those possessed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States, which can open and conduct any probe of a criminal nature. Several lawyers operating on the island have held the view that the scope of work of the Integrity Commission is limited to the regulations of the Act that set it up, namely to deal with matters of declaration of assets by persons who fall under its purview. The New Today renews its call for the conduct of a public inquiry into the MNIB as provided for by the Public Inquiry Act, and not the kind of closed-door inquiry being undertaken by the Integrity Commission in which only certain information is filtered to the public. The MNIB business is the business of the public, since it was set up by the 1979-1983 People's Revolutionary Government to give a boost to agriculture and the nation's farmers in particular. The people have a right to know what is taking place with the finances and assets of their business, and not for the holding of any private inquiry to keep them out of the know. There you have it, pilgrims. There is your editorial, which appeared in this past week's edition of The New Today. Now, my guest has arrived, and we're going to be chatting with him in just a wee bit, Mr. Rod Charles. But let me get back here to Rumble Chat first on the Grenada broadcast site. Opie says, I praised Lou Smith's last interview with Dr. Mitchell and thought it would be only time before he is cut down by the so-called Grenada's Great One. Pity. We are allowing this victimization to go on recklessly. Then we turn to Facebook. Ernesto says, just being curious, haven't heard anything lately from the unions. Are they also missing in action? Good point, Ernesto. Good point. Have to check up on them again. Don't know, but I heard a teacher was the only one doing so. Margaret says, well, the Integrity Commission has to justify its existence, hence the reason for taking on the MNIB inquiry. Now, let me say this. Thank you, Margaret, for bringing that up. You may remember that we had Mr. Cashman Hood here, I think it was last Sunday, and he posed a question which he wanted me to present to the chairperson of the commission, Lady Ananda Trotman Joseph. I think it's very important that I mention this. You know that I try to give both sides an opportunity to vent. Everybody needs to be heard, whether you like it or not. People need to be heard. So, well, on Monday, I called Lady Trotman Joseph. She answered the phone, thankfully, and unfortunately she was on a conference call and said to me that she would get back to me. I never heard from her, but shortly after I spoke with her, I thought, you know what? I want to get this lady to appear here this morning to give her side of the story. It's only fair. But I wasn't sure whether she was listening to last Sunday's program or not. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to send her a recording of last week's program. I sent that to her by transfer protocol, and she acknowledged it. Said she would listen and get back to me. Well, I heard from her yesterday that she has turned the matter over to the attorneys. Whatever that means, I don't know. But I'm still hoping that we will get a response to the question that was asked by Attorney Hood. And that question was, what's the real reason why this inquiry was set up? Okay? We need to hear both sides of the story. All right. Kipling Francis says, if anyone is expecting the PM to speak the truth, well, be prepared to wait for a very long time. Get that in your head, so says Kipling. And nothing on Rumble Chat. So we're going to take another quick break here, and then we'll come back with Mr. Charles.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
thank you for partnering with us as we energize our SPATE.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company. Tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive. Motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary. Public liability. Professional indemnity. Directors liability. And wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
Alrighty, folks, it's now 2.5 minutes away from the hour. Rod Charles is a specialist investigator, researcher, and an expert witness. Primary focus on incidents involving risk of fatality and or life-changing injuries. He has served for 30 years. This young man you're going to see in just a wee bit, you'll probably be asking, 30 years? Got to be kidding. 30 years with London's Metropolitan Police and retired at the rank of Chief Inspector. Take a look. This is Mr. Rod Charles. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant.
Just call me George, please. First name basis here.
Thank you, George.
Okay. Pleasure having you. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Rod Charles?
Well, your
that sums it up?
Yeah, your concise summary is spot on. I worked for 30 years. I joined in 1984, retired in 2014 with London's Metropolitan Police. I covered a spectrum of different tasks and projects and portfolios in obviously a 30-year period, so it's a lot I got through. Street duty, general policing, emergency response, road safety, which we'll talk about today, firearms, counter-terrorism, and one of my specialties was public order policing. We're talking about large-scale events, be it carnival, football matches, and other large-scale events where significant members of the public come together.
Now, I explained to our listeners this morning that I heard from you a couple of weeks ago and that you were pretty concerned about the fact that, I mean, there you are sitting in London, you're hearing about all these accidents on this tiny little island of ours. How did that come about, sir?
Well, just for clarity, I was born in London, England, but I first came to Grenada as a 10-year-old. My parents live in St. Mark's. I live in St. Mark's since my retirement, and I moved between the two. So I spend a significant amount of time in Grenada, as I'm here, and also an equivalent amount of time in London. But for several decades now, I have, whilst I'm driving in Grenada, observing the road usage in Grenada, and also when I'm in London, listening to some reports of some really awful collisions which are taking place. And let me be absolutely clear, because I think some of the things I'm going to say will maybe make some people's get some people's heckles up, and people get defensive. And that's not what I'm here to do. But I am here to talk about a very, very difficult set of circumstances. Grenada is, in my opinion, probably the best country in the Caribbean for natural landscapes, etc. And if other countries or other people want to argue that it's that there are others better, my view will be that it's on par. Grenada is on par with its natural, beautiful landscapes. And a lot of other things, sir. Indeed, indeed. But the problem that I am here to talk about, whilst I have many other portfolios that I deal with, is the rate of avoidable injuries and deaths that are occurring on these roads. And it's persisted for decades. It's ironic that I contacted you a couple of weeks ago. Again, I thank you for allowing me to speak to your listeners today. But just this week alone, there was a horrendous collision. A bus left the road in Perseverance, St. George, and it's clear that numerous double figures of casualties have been taken to hospital. Fortunately, my understanding at the present time is there aren't any fatalities, but there are certainly serious injuries amongst them, and there are possibly life-changing injuries amongst them. I say that because whilst we engaged a couple of weeks ago, the fact that these collisions are regularly, I mean weekly occurring, it is testament to the fact that we need to do something about it. Now, I'll be absolutely clear. Accidents, road traffic accidents do occur, but I have empirical evidence to confirm that a high proportion of those incidents are the result of negligence, and they are avoidable collisions. We must do something about it. I haven't come here simply to rant on and criticize and condemn. This is not what this is about. This is about looking to work with those who are decision makers to enhance what we're doing and what we can do to make Grenada's roads safer. And just to give a bit of background of what I've done, in 2016, in September, I wrote to the then Chief of Police, Mr. James, and he kindly, or his staff kindly, arranged a meeting between me and the deputy at the time was Mr. Franklin Redhead. We had a great discussion in October 2016. And this is one of the priorities which I discussed with that senior officer. This isn't personal. It isn't about criticizing individual actions, but my concern is 2 years on, having left that meeting, I am still here. I've been to Grenada and back to London numerous occasions. And how we left it was, well, they'd be in touch. Now, maybe they are doing things behind the scenes.
Over that period of time?
Or maybe they aren't doing anything at all. And I am concerned. And even if they were doing things or are doing things, the problem is those things are not visible and apparent enough, and they are certainly not reducing the rate of collisions that are resulting in loss of lives. And for those who haven't died, many of them are walking the streets of Grenada and parts of the country with life-changing injuries, pain and discomfort, which persists for their lifetimes. We can do something about it. Now, I've contacted the police service. I'm going to, this week, make contact with the current acting commissioner.
Right.
My want will be to hopefully have another discussion, but rather than talk, let's work together, let's put some action plans in. Traffic management planning, look at preventative measures, and then look at investigations. A particular concern to me, and I'll be very careful, George, because when there are active investigations, I have to tread carefully, and I don't want to prejudice any cases. But there are many people who have lost their lives avoidably. There's one in St. Mark's only 3 weeks ago, and the individual's Land Rover turned over. He suffered a head injury, was in hospital in a really terrible state, and then he has subsequently died. There are preventative measures that can be put in place to stop or at least minimize these collisions. But certainly, another concern for me is the standard of investigation post-incident. Now, I know, having seen the deceased vehicle is back in his Land Rover mechanic's yard. There is a suggestion, I stress a suggestion, that another vehicle may have been involved in the driving maneuvers and may have contributed to the collision. But neither of those vehicles have been impounded. Neither of those vehicles have been subject to forensic or mechanical inspections. And I say that because if the investigating officer, who may be listening now, and I'll say please contact me, this is not condemning or criticizing what you're doing, I'm talking about ways to enhance it. You cannot have conducted the necessary forensics and mechanical inspections when you haven't impounded the vehicles, and because these things must be done systematically, They must be done strategically. They must be done with method. Now, the fact that neither vehicle have been taken into police custody speaks for itself. We have a person who died. As it happens, I know this gentleman very well. I'll be at his funeral on Wednesday, and make no bones about it, because of his fantastic impact on the local community in St. Mark, it will probably result in a significant attendance, and probably the parish will close down for a while whilst people pay their respects. But this isn't just about that case. There are numerous others. Time doesn't permit me to go through the different cases to talk about the serious gaps in investigation. Now, yes, I've spent 30 years in London. I haven't come here to try to usurp anyone's role, to take over anyone's job. I have offered, and I am currently offering, the Royal Grenadian Police Force the opportunity to engage with me. If you don't want to engage with me, with my background and my experience and my links to this country, then so be it. But at least contact me and let me put you in contact with other parties who can help enhance and improve what's going on, or what is not going on the roads of Grenada. We need traffic management planning. We need better road signage. We have drivers who, it isn't just about bus drivers, but we have drivers who have multiple people on board, driving vehicles commercially for gain. If they don't have an interest in their own welfare and safeguarding their own lives, they should certainly have an interest in caring for the people who are on their buses. They have no right to drive in a manner that risks the lives and loses the lives of people who are using their services. So I talk about some of the sanctions that we can put in place: greater enforcement, greater prevention, disqualifying drivers for fixed period of times or for indefinite periods of time, depending on the risks that they present on Grenada's roads, impounding vehicles if we can't get the drivers to comply. There are a whole range, a whole raft of things that we can be doing. But George, I have concerns that this isn't going to change. So to the Chief of Police and to relevant government ministers, you will hear from me this week. If you're listening now, then you by all means, through George Grant's radio station, you can contact me. I am amenable, even when I'm in London. It matters not. We have the wonders of technology. I will do my damnedest to help enhance what's taking place on the roads. But without some engagement, we're not going to have any improvement. One other point that I'll just emphasize here is the use of mobile phones and other devices that distract drivers when you're driving at sometimes too excessive speed, which don't fit the current road conditions. And then you are distracted by some technical device. These are contributing factors. I am not saying that these are factors in the cases that I've made reference to, but I am saying that they are the cause of a number of collisions. And why I am stern about this, why I am not pulling punches about it, is because people are losing their lives. And those who haven't lost their lives are having to spend the rest of their lives with avoidable disabilities, infirmities, because we're not doing enough here. Obviously, having worked for 30 years with the police service, I had the privilege of going to America to work with some of their organizations. I'd worked across Europe. What I will say is the investigations that needs to take place after collisions is quite it's quite significant. It takes a lot of time. Some of the friends and families went to see the casualty of the Land Rover collision, Mr. Scott, in hospital. And I'm aghast to learn that while he was being treated for a medical injury, a serious head wound, and I think he may have ingested some gasoline, he was restrained and strapped, tied to a bed in the General Hospital. Now, I'm confident as well to say that as we speak, there are probably other patients and casualties tied to beds. Now, this is, for whatever reason, it's become quite common practice. Some may say, well, what relevance is there to road traffic safety? But it's linked. This is about the care and the recuperation of patients. In my time, I have dealt with numerous psychiatric patients who, as a last resort, will be physically restrained. In the General Hospital at the present time, there are casualties, medically ill, not psychiatrically ill patients, who are actually strapped, restrained, and tied to their beds. And even in this week alone, speaking to one or two people, just a dip sample poll. I won't say names of the people involved. Fortunately, not all of them have passed away. But at least 5 that I have on my list here have died. I'm not saying it's because of the medical care. I'm saying that it is barbaric and it does not happen in other developed countries. Grenada is a developed country. Grenada is smaller in scale. It doesn't have the finances of other countries. But if we are, we are restraining, strapping, tying medically ill people to beds. And this practice must stop forthwith. There is no justification for it. It isn't going to assist somebody's recovery. And while some would say, well, who are you to speak on this? Well, I have a background. My expertise is in policing, law enforcement, security and investigations. But clearly, I can give empirical proof of this, that I have partners and I have colleagues who have backgrounds in the medical sphere. People aren't tied to beds in London or any place in the United Kingdom. Quite frankly, if there was a case of a person tied to a bed in the UK, I'd say it's America as well, but I don't spend a lot of time over there. If there were cases, I will tell you that the doctor who has given the decision to do that and the nursing staff would face prosecution. It is barbaric and it has to stop because it doesn't apply elsewhere. It will not help casualties in Grenada to continue with this practice.
Rod, you have said a lot, and there are a couple of things I want to talk with you about, but first, there are a number of comments here from people around the world who are listening to you right now, and I don't want to get too far behind, so let's start here. Ryan is a Grenadian who lives out in Orlando, Florida, and he comes here live, says, "Officer, I drove on Grenada roads on my October 18th vacation and find island drivers reckless and negligent. Grenada drivers love to overtake too much. Traffic police monitoring reckless drivers in Grenada and giving costly moving violations." And about the restraints, he says, "Patients die in restraints." Okay, that's Ryan. But there are other people out there. Kipling says, "The plain truth is lots of Grenadian drivers just cannot drive. Quite a few buy their license." And this is something that's been talked about here in the past. This is nothing new. I have no proof that that is the case, but it's something that's commonly talked about in this country. Alana Morris Van Tassel says, "What are we talking about? The dangerous taxi drivers in Grenada? Ha ha!" She sees a little humor in that. Peter Bishop says, "The gentleman knows his stuff. I wish him the best with his meeting with the RGPF. But Grenada is a talk shop society. only talk and little follow-up. Rod, that's an ex-police officer there. That's an ex-police officer.
I cannot disagree with anything I've heard today. And it's sad that I cannot.
I ain't through with you yet, sir. Ernesto Jose says, how can the police investigate the police when lots of the buses are owned and driven by themselves? You're nodding your head. Kipling says, the high cost of living, the high cost of gas, so much on one's mind while driving. That's a lot to cope with. And Margaret Francis is listening to you in New York right now. And she says, Rod, he is right. Restraining patients is considered abuse. This woman is in the healthcare system in New York.
It is a practice that must stop forthwith. It must stop right this moment, because it isn't a one-off occurrence. It is ongoing. I find it disbelief until you see it yourself, and then you think, well, goodness me, how can this continue? Because it doesn't apply. It cannot apply elsewhere. Therefore, whatever medical arrangements, whether medical procedures they have elsewhere, then we need to adopt them here. I have talked about the support and the work I want to do with the police service to safeguard the roads. I am not a medical practitioner, but I know people who are, who have the expertise and they can give advice. Nobody is coming here trying to take a job to remove a person from their role. You keep your role. You keep your status. But what you do need to do is to consult those people who have a different way, who have maybe a different depth and breadth of experience to assist, to enhance what's taking place in Grenada. There's a saying which I used to laugh about as a boy and a teenager and a young man growing up in Grenada. They say that if you can drive in Grenada, you can drive anywhere. And in the last few years, there's no more humor in that for me. I find it dismissive, and I find it offensive. I don't joke about it anymore, because the casualties, the deaths, the life-changing injuries, they're too serious now for me to continue to joke about stuff which isn't true. Fantastic mountainous roads in Grenada. It's a unique drive-in terrain. But when you drive recklessly here and think that covering speed and putting lives at risk means you can drive anywhere else, if you were to try to drive like that in another country, again, robust prosecution and sanctions would follow. You would be removed from the road, your vehicle would be impounded. And in the event that that doesn't stop you, then you would be incarcerated. That's what would happen, because what's taking place on the road here is scandalous. If in the intervening time between me talking to you today and if the RGPF deign that they want to talk to me, that will be fantastic. But I am absolutely confident that in that intervening time, there will be more casualties. So let's do something to help remedy the problem. I haven't come here to say, look, I can talk to you and change it in a heartbeat. What I have come to say is, we can change it. And whereas some will say, well, Grenada doesn't have the money, I have 30 years background. I have the experience, the skill, the knowledge, the training packages. I trained officers in London. I can train officers here. And better still, not worse still, better still, I have offered to do this at virtual nil cost, because I have an affinity and links to Grenada. So I have to ask myself, why won't people engage with me? Why won't the powers that be engage? Maybe they're content with what they have here.
That's part of it. And let me jump in here. I hate to interrupt you, but I have to jump in here because, Rod, there is a paranoia. You know, I don't think you're coming here asking to take anybody's job away from them. I don't get that feeling. However, I'll tell you, I've been back here 31 years. I lived in Canada. And I was treated as though I was here to steal somebody's job. There's this paranoia that, you know, people from the outside are here to take out jobs, when all you want to do is help and ask for nothing in return. Okay? There's a note here from somebody named Penny C. Penny C lives in northern Quebec. She says, Mr. Charles, as a frequent visitor to Grenada, I always shudder at the prospect of being crammed way beyond capacity into the local buses. Where is the safety? Not to mention the driving habits of not all, but some drivers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's on Rumble Chat. Grantus King Lion says, safety is not a friendly word in Grenada. Yeah? Ryan says, there is a need for radar detected traffic police on Maurice Bishop Highway to combat speeders. Come on, Ryan, please give me a break. For years, I have heard about these radar detectors. You have television news showing these bright, glitzy little devices that have been given. Where the hell is the use of those detectors, Ryan? We have them. Margaret Francis says, I think a big part of the problem is the we are the best syndrome. So we have the best drivers, the best nurses, the best government, the best. So if you are the best, there's no need for additional knowledge and self-improvement. Hold on a sec here. There is no need for additional knowledge and self-improvement, and so crap will continue. So says Margaret in New York. Kipling says, on behalf of concerned Grenadians, I wish to thank you for trying to help. Thank you, sir. But sad to say, if you were a Chinese, you would have been accepted. And finally, not finally, but on Facebook anyway, Ernesto says, Mr. Rod, you meant well, but remember, we don't like changes. And we love to complain when things are not going our way. Good luck. You know, even before I move on, Rod, do you see how what you're saying here is resonating with the audience this morning? So, I mean, this guy is not some space cadet who showed up here this morning and wanted airtime on social media. He knows what he's talking about, and you folks are relating. Ronnie Slinger says, the bright light on some vehicles at night is a problem. Do you know there are people in this country who refuse to drive at night anymore?
I know many people who don't like to come, many people resident here who, be it nighttime driving or driving on the Western Road. They prefer not to do it because of the hazards there. But the hazard isn't the actual road, the road is the road. Yes, work can be done to enhance it and to safeguard it, put safety railings up and better signage. But the real hazard is the method, the manner in which some of the drivers are propelling their vehicles at speed and the maneuvers, and where they push position or abandon their vehicles, leaving additional hazards for other road users. I don't doubt for a minute that what I'm saying here will fall on many deaf ears. But that doesn't mean I live in Grenada. I live in London. I'm between the two. I have a passion for this, so I will continue. It would be nice to hear from the police service, but they are going to hear from me again, and I will continue to do so. But if we can't get the authorities to effect those changes, and I think the people need to start working together and make their voices clearer. Some won't want to, it may be deaf ears for some, but the bottom line is those listeners now will know people who they lost. They will know people who are currently walking with ailments and disabilities and infirmities which resulted from avoidable collisions. And it's to those people then, and those loved ones of those individuals, I say engage with me, because we can either do it with the police service and the government ministers, or, failing that, we'll do it anyway. Because there are ways to do it. But without the authorities, and this isn't about insurrection and trying to oppose individuals. My take is this. The starting point is to work with those authorities that have the power and the resources to make things happen. I know that there's money needed, there's additional resources, but there's also something about the better use of resources. Patrolling officers. When officers are patrolling, how do we brief them? What tactics and training do they have? The technical instruments that we spoke about is part of the problem. I had a gentleman strike my sister. I was driving my sister's car. I had a plumber in with me, driving down to St. George. This is a year ago. And he overtook me, cut in too soon, and hit the offside front of my vehicle. And he was off like a light. I thought, goodness me. So I followed him, and he got stuck in Happy Hill, fortunately, and I was able to block him, and I, as good as, detained him. I had his keys for his vehicle, and then I learnt he was an unlicensed driver. True story, true fact here. He pleaded with me to let him go. I don't know if it was the way I spoke to him, but he gave me his keys and realised that, oh, I'm just a normal visitor like him, or another resident like him, and he wanted his keys back, but they were in my pocket, and I thought, well, the only way you're going to get them is if you try to take them, and that wasn't going to happen. We were there on the road for about 30-40 minutes, and the police officer, whose number is clear here, I won't embarrass that officer, came past on a motorcycle. The errant driver panicked and pleaded with me, listen, I'll do whatever, I'll try and make amends. I told the officer, this is a fail-to-stop accident, or collision. I don't like the term accident, because these things are not accidents, they're avoidable collisions. And the officer, having explained to the officer that I had to pursue this driver for almost a mile to get him to stop, the officer said to me, well, this isn't his patch. He'll call another officer who will report the collision. And I realized, you know what, I will have to deal with things myself, even though I'm retired, and even if I'm not retired, I have experienced it, but I live in Grenada, and so I got the guy to pay for the damage to my vehicle. But this is a case of an individual who had no license. I had the guy stopped, I had his keys in my pocket, and I had a police officer in uniform turn up on a motorbike. And if the commissioner wants to talk to me about it, I will tell him the officer's collar number. But the officer said it's not his jurisdiction, he'll call someone else. You won't be surprised to know, George, nobody turned up. But Grenada, as we know, is 21 miles long. It's 12 miles wide. It is not 110,000 people thereabouts. It is not a massive area. When an officer comes across an incident of this kind, then the onus is on them to be professional and to deal with it. Fortunate for me, I live here. I know Grenada well for many, many years. If this was a tourist or a visitor, they would be at a loss, because that officer's response would, I dare say, have been the same. He could say it wouldn't be, but I think, well, why not? I'm a person who told you. And I explained to him, this wasn't a straightforward touch collision and we stopped. I had to pursue the guy who was like a bat, out, like trying to fly away from me, but I know the roads, and I managed to stop him. I'll stop there because, as I say, this, George, it's not about me. But why I give that story, and I could give others, is because I want the public to know that I haven't just turned up here to talk fancifully about things. I'm talking about things I've observed and experienced myself.
Rod, let me assure you, the public knows. You're preaching
to the converted.
Okay? They know. They know. I want to touch on a couple of things. You mentioned the limited resources. You know, for many, many years, I worked very closely with the police, trying to create an environment of public relations where I wanted the public to feel comfortable with the police and vice versa. I am now convinced that this goes way beyond a lack of resources. It's a mindset. It's a mindset.
I think you're right.
Let me tell you something. I talked within the last month anyway, I spoke about an incident where on a crosswalk downtown near the Digicel on Melville Street there, I almost got run over by a car that had come from the tunnel, okay? While I'm on the crosswalk, there are 2 police officers, one with bars. They were totally oblivious to what happened. They're standing at the crosswalk. A pedestrian almost gets run over, and they like nothing happened. Okay, it's a mindset. It's a mindset. On Rumble Chat here, Isaac says, we're having too many accidents on our roads, especially in recent times. Some drivers are without proper driving licenses, having purchased their driver's licenses. Only recently, police officers were charged for selling driver's licenses. Charles, I would suggest that you speak to PM Mitchell. So says OP.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
It's a good idea. Ryan says, Grenada drivers blind you at night with blazing LED headlamps. So you pull off the road and let them go by. And I do let them get in front of me. Okay. Bernard Gilbert says, too many lying excuses at the top. You know, I mean, I'm not surprised at the reaction you're getting here this morning. I'm not, you know. And when people like me speak out, you're subject to persecution, victimization, ostracization. I've lost a radio station for speaking out.
Yeah, I mean, I've followed you for a few years, George.
Because I speak out.
I think for me, the difficulty here is I have been more behind the scenes. I am going to continue to propel and project my voice.
Like me.
I'm going to keep doing it, and maybe I thank you twice. I'll do it a third time. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to your listeners. But the reason I'm going to do it, and the reason I'm not going to pull my punches, is because whilst there will be many people who will be vexed or angered at some of the things I say when there's no real reason to be, I am more passionate and more concerned about the people who died needlessly, the people who are walking or moving about with disabilities and infirmities because they were in avoidable accidents. And as we speak, in the interim, before we get anything done, if the authorities want to engage, I've said it once, I'll say it again, the high risk is there are people who are currently in good health. And that's going to change unless we do something about it, because there are people using the roads, and I don't think for a minute they set out to cause the adverse impact that they do cause. But nonetheless, they are negligent, they are careless, and they are dealing and creating collisions that are avoidable. And that's why I'm emphasizing these are collisions. We stopped, in my policing years, the earlier years, we talked about accidents, and then we noticed over the years we stopped referring to accidents because we know accidents do occur. But in the vast majority of instances, it's down to either defects in the vehicle or, more prominent, defects in the driving. And these collisions, not accidents, these collisions are avoidable. So we've got to do something about it.
Ryan says, for 20 years I drove in Greater London, the UK, and the Met enforce traffic laws. Okay?
Absolutely.
Let's dream on here, right? Kipling says, you know, some people are going to laugh at this, but this is a very sad state of affairs. it goes to show the level of frustration and cynicism that has built up in the Grenadian people over years. Kipling says, "Good luck speaking to the PM. Case closed." You know, we chuckle at that, Rod, but it's a sad, sad commentary on where we are in Grenada today. Sad. Ryan says, here in Florida, the state troopers also enforce traffic laws. Grenada must step up. I think that's it. Rod, could you try and summarize? You've mentioned things that you'd like to see change, but could you just summarize some steps that would help to enhance the current situation?
There are, not necessarily in the order I'm giving them, but these are a series of actions that need to take place. There needs to be a revision and a review of the training provided to the police officers. I know amongst them, and some I know personally, I'm not criticizing any individual, I'm talking about the generic training and the understanding of what they should be doing when they're on patrol. When they're on patrol, they need to be able to deal with incidents without fear or favor. And a significant problem here, because we're dealing with a small community, is confidentiality. And therefore, an officer may decide not to act with integrity or openness and fairness because he or she has an allegiance or a family relationship to a particular person who may know somebody involved in, we're talking about road collisions here. I know it's very different because in the United Kingdom with 63 million people, and in the capital where I worked, you had 8 million people, 10 million people with the commuters coming back and forward. So you don't have that small group connections. You have that in Grenada. But road signage for people who are visiting Grenada, yes, there's a little bit of expense, but the roads are quite hazardous, winding roads through mountains. You need to tell visitors who decide to hire vehicles what the hazards are and put them in advance. And if the police want to claim that the signs are being removed, then that's down to them to enforce and prosecute those people who are interfering with them. There are drivers who are listening now. Some, this falls on deaf ears. Some will say, well, he's not talking about me. But I am talking about you. It's not just bus drivers, but it's a whole range. It includes bus drivers and a whole range of individuals. In terms of steps, George, if they won't comply, they need to be prosecuted and disqualified from driving for fixed periods of time. In the event that your driving persists, your standard of driving is so low and persists that you risk people's lives, then you can be disqualified for indefinite periods of times. And then we need to get round to impounding vehicles. So if that does, at the incremental levels, if they won't comply, if prosecution doesn't work, take the vehicle from them. Not randomly, but having legislation to do so. And I come back full circle that you're never going to prevent all collisions. It's never going to happen. There's collisions in London as we speak. But the aftermath of collisions, the investigation must be thorough. And as I say, on Wednesday, St. Mark's will be in shutdown as people mourn the loss of Anderson Scott. And for the officers who are listening, because of the early evidential gathering that it's clear to me has not taken place, I invite you to contact me. Don't be hostile, come and speak to me. Some things you won't be able to recover, because if you don't get them early, you'll be struggling. But you need to have post-investigative measures which are effective. Prevention, and where we can't prevent it, investigate it thoroughly. Grenada, as you've rightly said, I talked about the landscape and you said there are many things more. I wasn't born in Grenada, but I am a dual national. I can't determine where I'm born. I was born in London. but my parents brought me here when I was 10 of my own volition. I am here in Grenada for significant proportions of any year, and as I age, I guess I may spend more and more time here. This is something which is passionate for me, and I ask those people in power, from the Prime Minister through to the senior police officers, please engage with me, and if you don't like dealing with me, that's fine. It's not about me. Then I will put you in touch with other people, other organizations that can help enhance what's taking place here. And if you don't do that, then somehow, because problem solving is what I do, then I'm going to go about with the residents of this country to enhance and safeguard people. If we can't get those people who have the responsibility to do it, then we have to do it ourselves.
There's a gentleman now in Carriacou. He's an English gentleman. He's listening to you right now. And he says, good luck, Mr. Charles. Some of these drivers wouldn't last 5 minutes in London.
Less than that.
Yeah, yeah. Joyce E. Smith says, is there any law in Grenada? Everyone seems to do as they like. Yeah. They're resonating. They're resonating. Ernesto says, Mr. Rod, I think you should set up a meeting with the commissioner. He seems decent and willing to listen to make important, I would imagine, best decisions for Grenada. You know, I'm happy to hear that you're going to talk with the police this week. And just getting back to what Ernesto is saying here, we have a commissioner now, and I have probably the highest hopes I've had in the 36 years since I've been back here for the RGPF. I believe that this man means well. Whether or not he's going to have the latitude to do what he believes needs to be done will have to be seen, okay? I believe that he's capable, but again, whether or not he has the latitude to do what needs to be done is left to be seen.
George, may I say then, because just for absolute clarity, having previously contacted the former commissioner, this timing could be very good here. I don't have a meeting set up with the current commissioner, but if he or anyone close to him is listening, then you can reach out to me. Make no bones about it. This week, I will be making contact with the commissioner, and I will be flexible, have latitude to align my availability to the busy commissioner's calendar. So I will be making more approaches, and I will see the commissioner, assuming he cares to see me.
Well, you know, I hope that you're going to keep us informed on the outcome of your meeting with the commissioner and
if
the
he
force
agrees
in
to
general.
see me.
If he agrees to see you. I think it would be good if he could hear the conversation that we're having here this morning. Tessa Barry says, I'm willing to join an awareness team with you, sir, if the authorities are not taking you on. An awareness campaign is a good start, utilizing all available media networks, slogans, signs, jingles, etc. Awareness, awareness. You know that we pass everything on to education and awareness.
Did you say Tessa Barry there?
Tessa,
George?
T-E-S-S-A. I've got her contact.
You will have my contact, and if you could facilitate us communicating, that would be fantastic. Tessa, I would be pleased to start a dialogue and some action plans with you.
Rod, I was just about to say the issue here is enforcement. I am sick and tired of hearing about, oh, let's educate, let's educate, let's educate. We make some jingles, we put some posters up and about, and that's it. And then people just go do what they shouldn't be doing. You know, a few years ago, they came up with this thing about wearing seatbelts. For a little while, big brouhaha, man. People are being charged. And then, gone. no enforcement. Where is this taking us, man?
You see, the pressure here comes to the current commissioner because the onus is on that senior officer not to be directly accountable for every action of individual police officers because, again, he can't be everywhere. But it is for him to put in place an infrastructure that will make sure that officers are correctly briefed and officers follow through. Officers are also, you talked about officers with chevrons on stripes, etc. When I was promoted I was fortunate, I did a few more promotions, but I became a sergeant. I can tell you that that is the most significant leap in policing. From constable to sergeant is the most significant leap. Why? Because the transition to supervision, the transition to being held to account, and for the first time, the first tier, that you become responsible for the actions of officers or the omissions of officers when they don't do their job correctly. That's a lot of pressure on officers. So when an officer is patrolling or moving around with the chevrons, looks impressive, but it's only impressive if you make that supervision work for you. And some, I don't know all of them, but some do not. But it does, and this is where it comes back to the Chief of Police, because I'm looking forward to making contact. That will probably be done tonight, if not tomorrow morning, and I'll stand by to see what response comes through. If the public, and it's a small country, if anybody is family members are listening to the commissioner and want to bring his attention to this person who's been talking on the radio, then please give advance notice that I am going to be contacting them within 24 hours. And I'll leave the onus on the police to engage. I am not here trying to usurp or trying to change. I'm here trying to give the benefit of 30 years experience.
And I think the public is aware of that. I really do believe that. And, you know, we need to also avoid casting a broad blanket, because there are, I can attest to the fact that there are police officers in the force who over the years have worked their buns off to serve and protect.
It is very difficult for those excellent officers to continue to try to strive when they have in their midst officers who are not punching their weight and pulling their weight. And so they are. I'm glad you mentioned that, because if I've given the impression that it's all officers, then I would be wrong. Having worked in policing, I know that there are excellent officers who are trying, but they are tarnished by the actions or the omissions of other officers.
Which brings me to another issue, and that has to do with their employment policy. You know, not everybody's made to be a cop.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, there are a lot of people out there who just want to work.
Yes.
They want a job.
Absolutely. So
you hire pretty much anybody. And therein lies the problem. Therein lies the problem. It starts right at the beginning. Tessa Barry says, George, I remember when there was a time Grenadians used to do a lot of littering. Awareness campaign facilitated by Ms. It's not Mona, it's not Mona Tessa, it's Myrna, M-Y-R-N-A, went a long way. Not 100%, but a lot of Grenadians became more conscious of what they were doing. We can help ourselves. If 3 bus drivers are touched by awareness, that's 15 lives safer. Bob Marichaux says, hold on, Ryan says, our Grenada has so many nice places to drive to for a visit, but driving on the roads is a deterrent. Joycey Smith says, I live in London, and I can relate with what he is saying. Driving offenses here are a serious matter. Bob Marichaux says, I think that there is enough traffic offenses to warrant a traffic court at evenings or night in Grenada. Fines are always a deterrent in these cases, but it will have to work in tandem with enforcement.
You have to disqualify people from the road when they won't heed the laws. And if the disqualification doesn't work because they cannot comply with the orders, then you have to impound the vehicles that they are given access to. And that might mean some tweaking or creation of new laws. But you know what? It's worth doing it, because not to do it results in the tragedies and the catastrophes we've been talking about.
Bernard Gilbert says the buses carry too many passengers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, it's just a mindset that needs to be changed, and the only way you're going to change that mindset is with some enforcement.
Yeah.
Careful selection of employees for the force and enforcement. Ernesto says, I'm with you, and we'll be praying for you to help bring about that change with your experience, which is needed badly. Kipling Francis says, sir, the only way these things can and will work is when and if we have a change of government. But that is, again, I say, if and when. You know, Kipling, you may have a point, but I believe without a change of government, change of mindset.
This isn't a political solution.
It's not.
It's not a political solution. It needs robust supervision. It needs robust directions, and it needs to hold officers to account when they fail to do what they should have done. And in absence of that, the officers can walk by, they can disregard, they can ignore things. And based on what we said a little while ago, let me stress, some officers. Yeah. Because there are other officers out there doing their damnedest to do well. But they're struggling when they look at their colleagues who are not doing what they should be doing. And these individuals are allowed to do it have their omissions with impunity. Yeah. Because the supervisors don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that I am talking about. This is the kind of change in regime, because I'll tell you when you, as a police officer, I never left a police station. I was uniformed for 30 years. I never left a police station without a thorough briefing on what were the recent events and what our intelligence said are likely to happen. And then in and around that, there are things that happen unexpectedly. But that's the beauty of policing, because they train you to be able to react to it. Mm-hmm. Officers need to be briefed thoroughly, and officers need to be challenged if they are told that if people learn that they didn't do something that they should have done. Mm-hmm. But at the moment, those officers who are what I will describe as more rogue officers or lazy officers, and as offensive as it may sound, unfortunately, listeners, it's true about some officers. And the way to remedy them is to have sanctions. And when you don't do what you should be doing, then you are no longer part of the police service. Let's find people who want to do the job. Let's find people who care about their community. Because there are many out there who would love to have a crack at working within the police service. None of this is easy, but I managed to climb a few ranks in the police service. I scraped my head the other day, so the grey hairs aren't showing through as much as they normally do. Rest assured, my difficulties in the police service came from managing and challenging officers who underperformed or would not do what they would do. And so internally, behind the scenes, they're real hard stuff, real hard challenges. And that's where sergeants, inspectors and upwards have to be called to account. It's not just a person on the street not performing. They're not performing because their managers don't insist that they perform.
You know what's so particularly interesting about this conversation is that, excuse me, but you're an outsider. It's not like you're somebody who's here with an axe to grind. You know, there are a lot of people here who bitch because, well, I don't like so-and-so, and, you know. That's not the case with you. You're an outsider who's trying to help. Well, I'll tell you, I know that they have been listening. Based on the feedback I'm seeing here on Facebook and on Rumble Chat, they are listening. And you have said a lot that other people would like to say. But there's also a fear, my friend, of speaking out in this country. Big time. And that in itself is sad.
That is sad. I thank you again, George, for allowing me to have this extended time talking to you and to your listeners.
Well, if you really want to show your appreciation, how about keeping us informed on where things go from here?
Without
so this is not a one-off thing.
Without doubt. Thank you very much, and I will update, be it progress through discussion and then action, or in the event that I'm rebuffed and ignored. Either way, I'll keep you updated
one
on how
way or
we're
another.
doing.
And look, Ernesto was saying here, great interview, Mr. Grant. Would you have him back to give us an update on the progress made? Then Joycey Smith says, there should be signs on the road stating speed limits and not which party to vote for.
Absolutely.
Yvonne Joseph says, Mr. Grant, what this gentleman is saying is so true. I came home last year when my mom died, but was scared to take a bus. Ryan says, laissez-faire and paranoia are malaise in Grenada. Tessa Barry on Rumble Chat says, George, passengers can also get drivers to be more conscious. Get off the buses. Ask the questions in the driver's seat to slow down or drop you from the personal vehicles. You know something? I don't have a car, so I use public transportation a lot. And I got off a bus the other day because this bus driver, it's not that he was driving recklessly. He was, well, driving like an idiot. But stopping and waiting for passengers that were never existent. It's just a mindset. He doesn't give a hoot. The bus was almost full, but he just wanted 2 more people, and he's going to keep the 13 or whatever number of other people waiting until, hopefully, somebody shows up. It's the mindset, Rod. Kipling says, policemen that were dismissed from the force for wrongdoing under the NDC are back on the force and promoted. And you say it's not politics? So says Kipling. Dennis Perkins says, thanks, Mr. Charles. More power to your elbow. That's the British gentleman I was telling you about. Ryan says, thank you, officer. More, please. Love it. Oh, man, I am so glad we had this chat. Joycey Smith here is talking about now, and the loud music. That's another issue. Let me tell you something. Loud music. I spent 5 years working with the Royal Grenada Police Force to come up with a noise control act. And that was about 10 years ago. And I understand, I was told by a lawyer not too long ago, nobody's been charged under that act. They're just not serious. They're just not serious. God help us. Ryan says, GG, you have to be brave to use the Grenadian buses. Okay, folks, time out, time out. Georgie Porgy's got to go because we have some other things to take care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Keep in touch.
Thank you.
All right. Rod Charles, who is a specialist investigator, researcher, and expert witness. He's served 30 years with the London Metropolitan Police and retired at the rank of Chief Inspector. Serious stuff. Okie doke. Yvonne Joseph, you just slipped in. She says, you're talking to the bus driver, but they don't listen. They curse you instead. Yeah, it's just some of the realities we have to live with in this place. Pilgrims, I'll tell you what, coming up next, you got a couple of prime ministers coming at you, one from St. Kitts and one from Grenada, as well as the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. Stay tuned. A lot of stuff coming up.
Grenadian General Insurance Company, strength and stability. Grenadian General Insurance Company, tell your friends, tell your family. We cover householders comprehensive, motor and even fire too. Contractors all risk burglary, public liability, professional indemnity, directors liability, and wait, we still have more. Come and find out more what you're waiting for.
We are located on Scott Street, St. George's. For more information, call 440-2434.
Tell everybody.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
You know, folks, I'm running a little bit behind time, but I don't mind. This was worth every minute. Now, this past week, the Monetary Council of the Eastern Caribbean Central the ECCU, they held their meeting in the 93rd meeting of the council in St. Kitts, I think it was. And at the end of it, there was a press conference which was chaired by the Prime Minister of Grenada, Dr. Keith Mitchell, Mr. Timothy Harris, who's the Prime Minister of St. Kitts, and also Timothy Antoine, who's the Governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. They were asked questions by about 4 or 5 reporters. And some of the topics they discussed were pretty pertinent to Grenada. And I thought it was very important, or would be very important, that you hear some of these questions and answers. They're also going to talk about Venezuela at the end, so hang in there, okay? The first salvo of questions had to do with the marijuana and the banking system. The proposed sale of Scotiabank and the BICO payout. A lot of stuff, I told you. Well, let's start. Part 1.
Are there any concerns that the countries that might be engaged in the marijuana industry would face problems in the banking sector? We saw in the U.S., even though they had decriminalized it, they had legalized it, that the persons engaging in that industry could not bank, were not allowed to bank the profits from that industry, and it created quite a problem for them. So, I mean, is that going to be another challenge for us in the banking system? Also, can we get an update on the sale of the proposed sale of Scotiabank in the territories and Sagicor, and if there are any concerns, especially as it relates to the insurance sector with the Sagicor sale? The BICO payout, is this just for policyholders, and how many persons will be affected, and how much more is still outstanding to the people of the ECCU as it relates to BICO? And final question, if we could get an update on the correspondent banking situation. We keep hearing from other sources outside of the Caribbean that our Caribbean banks continue to lose those relationships, and we're not getting any information on the regional, on the regional level. And if you could say what's going on with that, and if there's any progress being made in mitigating that risk.
Yeah. On the issue of the marijuana, which of course is a very touchy issue at this time, and I think it's recognized that some countries are moving at different levels than others. We have to note the fact that some in the more developed countries, things are moving at a faster pace than we are moving. In Canada, for example, and in several states in the United States, they are going pretty fast and moving in that direction of legalizing at least some level of usage. So clearly that in itself will pose some complication for us in the region. And it was at the last meeting that we held in Trinidad, with the special meeting we held to discuss development in the region as a whole. It was agreed that we should meet and look at this issue as jointly, so that we can take decision at a regional level instead of countries by itself taking positions and finding themselves in difficulties with the banking system and other areas, not just the banking system, other issues legally and otherwise. So that's an area of work in progress, but we understand the significance of this and the importance to work together on this. We want to the issue of the...
On the matter of the marijuana, there are about 3 countries within the CARICOM region that have passed legislation. Jamaica being among the first, or was the first, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda. All of the countries perhaps at some point of contemplation of that. The experience from Jamaica that has been reported is that it has been challenging for growers of that product to formally access the banking system, and in large measure, and that too will be the experience in most places. I recall our own St. Kitts National Marijuana Commission engaging the Banking Association, and that was one of the concerns that they shared. So again, legislation may move, but the practical dynamics within countries are constrained by international forces. And the international major prohibition and challenge, or at least one of them, is that at the vantage point of United Nations, this is still considered a dangerous drug, and it is prescribed. And so you have those challenges. And even in the USA, where there is movement in that there is an increasing number of states that are legalizing or decriminalizing some usage, at the federal level, it is still a dangerous drug, and there are consequences for moving to states that have not legalized. So that challenge is there and will continue to be there for a while. So what we are having are changing patterns and views with respect to marijuana. The legislative agenda internationally, at least in the context of the United Nations, has not yet changed in terms of a reclassification. And until that happens, there will be a significant challenge to the rapid movement, if one will, in the development of this as an industry. Because an industry needs the support of a formal exchange, a banking system, and our banks are not going to move in any significant way unless the international marketplace clears this particular hurdle.
The governor will deal with the insurance issue.
Thanks, Governors. Thanks, Chairman. So a couple of things. On the Republic matter, that is to say we are, the Central Bank, now fully engaged on the review of the application made by Republic Bank to acquire the operations of Scotia in the Eastern Caribbean. We've asked for significant data sets and information from Republic. We have gotten everything we've asked for. At this point in time, we obviously reserve the right to ask for more as we go. But based on what we've asked for, we now have a full data set in front of us, and we are examining that. As we indicated before, the application process also includes us engaging our peer regulators. That is to say, for example, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, even the Bank of Guyana, and others. We started to do that. In fact, only last week, the regulators met in Aruba, and there was a college of regulators on Republic Bank. And so we are proceeding. You may want to know what the time frame is. We are not able to put too fine a point on it, except to say, in law, we have 6 months after receipt of all information. So we would not expect a decision before the middle of the year at this point in time. But we are certainly moving apace in terms of the assessment of that application. And we've had follow-up meetings and so on and that. On the question of, I'll ask you, Chairman, for the Chairman of the Core Committee to speak on insurance. But before I yield the floor, the microphone, let me just say a word on correspondent banking relations. At this moment, we continue to face a real threat of the loss of correspondent banking relations. That's the existential threat. However, we have seen a stabilization. That is to say, we have not seen additional loss of correspondent bank relations among our banks. So there has been some stabilization, and that's probably why you're not hearing a whole lot. No, the pressure is still there. The pressure is real. We still run the risk of a correspondent bank calling any one of our banks tomorrow morning and saying, we continue, and when asked why, simply respond and say, it's a business decision, no further explanations. That's a real threat. However, we have been able to work with the correspondent banks. The banks themselves have reached out. The ECCB has reached out. Our government heads have been engaging through advocacy at various levels with the IMF and others, and we have seen some stabilization in that system. We do continue to make the point, however, that as part of a defense mechanism to secure and protect our correspondent banks, it is absolutely important that our banks look for further collaboration and consolidation. That is to say, one of the real issues here is not just the risk profile of the region, but the size of the transactions or the size of the business. For some of the correspondent banks, that is what it boils down to. This is not sufficiently attractive or profitable for me vis-a-vis the risk, and therefore I'm exiting. And so we've encouraged our banks to come together more and more. And I can tell you right now, without going into details, that there's an initiative afoot to look at whether we can collaborate on risk and compliance across the indigenous banks. One shared service that will actually lower their costs, but also give additional comfort and confidence to not just us as regulators, but even the correspondent banks about the ability to take care of things like AML, anti-money laundering, and combating financing of terrorism. So that's a work in progress, but the good news is that the situation has stabilized. Insurance.
Alrighty. Part one. You guys are pretty quiet. I'm sure you're interested, but still mulling it over in your mind. What question do I ask? What statement do I make? Only thing I see here is a comment from Peter. Peter says, hope MWAG members are listening to how to ask questions of elected officials. Yeah, good point. Okay, folks. Oh, by the way, Ernesto has to leave us. He has to go to work, and he wants me to have a relaxing evening and a productive week. And he also wants me to make sure that I have videos next week, eh? Trying, Ernesto, I will. Anyhow, now, up next, will digital currencies be regulated, such as Bitcoin? And could these currencies pose a risk to the traditional banks? And what are the countries that have not yet enacted the harmonized credit reporting bill? Well, check them out.
Digital currency. I know the central bank had spoken about that some time ago and actually raised alert or caution rather for persons who are engaging in trading of digital currency to be careful. It's still unregulated. Is that something that the central bank believes should be regulated, or should member countries be looking at that? What are some of the plans? I know there are some initiatives that you spoke about, but not going into grave details, but are those initiatives still on course for where the central bank is concerned as it relates to digital currency? On that same note, we've noticed a number of cashless service providers in, well, at least in St. Kitts and Nevis, and I'm assuming this is the case across the ECCU as well. Is there a concern that, you know, that these services could pose a risk, if anything, to the traditional banking services that are being offered, or are they regulated just as much as the banks themselves? And Chairman, Mr. Mitchell, you mentioned in your statement that there were 4 member countries that have not yet enacted harmonized credit reporting bill. Could you name these 4 countries?
I can assist the chairman with that. I mean, that's a detail. So essentially, the 4 countries that have passed it are St. Vincent and Grenadines, St. Kitts and Nevis, Grenada, and Antigua and Barbuda. Those are the 4 countries that have passed it. So you know which 4 have not passed. Anguilla, Montserrat, Dominica, and St. Lucia. They have committed to... Yes, so yeah, because we do commend our governments who go early. We obviously encourage regional legislation. So we're looking forward to the passage of that. In terms of cryptocurrency, I just want to be clear. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. The challenge with cryptocurrencies is that they're not regulated. Their values are very volatile, the prices, and people could get hurt. So that is why on at least 2 occasions the ECCB has issued an advisory warning the public to be careful. What do we say? Do you know anything about this product? Do you understand the product? Can you afford to lose this money? Is this entity regulated, the provider of the service? If there's a dispute, who will you go to? Those are some of the questions that you need to ask. And unless you have satisfactory answers to those questions, you ought to be very careful. We do not want the public to get hurt. Now, the ECCB is itself pursuing a digital currency. That is different. It's different because it's a digital EC dollar backed by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. And there are several central banks in the world, actually, that are contemplating what we call central bank denominated or digital currencies, central bank digital currencies. So for us in the ECCB, we are very much proceeding with that pilot, where our thinking at this stage is to say, take out some of the paper and replace it with digital. People use their smartphones and make their payments. It's faster, it's cheaper. We will obviously want to make sure it's in a secure environment. And we believe that that has the potential to actually stimulate economic activity, to move payments faster, and of course to give people more disposable income, because if you're spending less on payments, it means you're keeping more money in your pocket. So we are, in fact, proceeding with that. We are into very advanced discussions now to launch the pilot, and we will come back to the public in due course on that. Let me say quickly on cash, Chairman, as I have the mic, we do not envisage a situation where we will eliminate cash, and that is not a desire or a goal. There will always be cash, as far as we can tell. However, we do feel that we have too much cash usage, and there are inefficiencies to using all of that cash, and there are security concerns as well. So when we say reduced use of cash, we start with the premise that based on what we've observed, about 80% of all transactions in the ECCU are cash or checks, paper-based. We believe we can cut that, or we want to motivate ourselves to cut that by about 50% over the next 5 years. So whether it's at the level of governments digitizing payments to the public, whether it's at the level of consumers, and of course even the central bank's role in terms of facilitating, we believe we can make a difference. Remember, we want to raise the trajectory of growth in the ECCU. We're doing 3% right now. Can we get to 5%? That's one additional step that could help us get to 5%. So the conversation is not about eliminating cash altogether, but about reducing our use of cash and hardening the financial system against crime. And I think we all know crime is an issue across the region. So that is the motivation for the central bank. Now, one last comment on competition between fintech and banks. Let there be competition, but it must be regulated. So we have no difficulty with fintech operators entering the space and competing with our banks. The banks are not entitled to be there alone. I mean, at the end of the day, let all contend once they're operating in a regulated and a proper environment. Why do we need a proper environment? Because absent that, the public may get hurt. So part of the discussion going on in the currency union, not just at ECCB, but with other regulators in our currency union, the Financial Services Commissions and so on, is about an appropriate framework, joint framework, regional framework for supervision and regulation of fintechs, financial technology firms, to allow them to operate. And you ask the question, are they given the same rules as the banks? No, they cannot be. In fact, our position is that to support innovation, we have to give them a dispensation that is, we would call it appropriate touch. I don't want to say light touch, because that sounds as if we too lax, but at the same time, it cannot be heavy touch. There's no chance for them to actually develop. So we have been working with, for example, in St. Kitts and Nevis, the Financial Services Commission. We've actually looking to see how we could collaborate to give a couple of providers an opportunity to enter the market, to test and to learn. And it's good for us as well as regulators, because we can observe and we can then figure out what is the appropriate framework going forward to enable that development while at the same time protecting the public.
Excuse me. Cinnamon tea. Cinnamon tea. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Next. Crime. They also discussed that. And the question was asked, how are homicides and other serious crimes affecting the region? Well?
I want to know how homicides and other crimes are affecting the state of the OECS economy. Has there any study been done on this?
I don't think that, yes, I don't think there's been any serious study specifically looking through the region as a whole. In my country's case, we are not known to have a very high level of criminal activities. Our murder rate is extremely low.
You had 11 in 2016.
Yeah, but that's comparatively speaking, and usually most of it is usually family related or no organized criminal activity as such. So
St. Vincent had 41 homicides in 2017.
Yes, we recognize the issue of crime, and clearly it must have some factor in economic activity. It has to. But no formal study has been done. I don't know, my colleague.
A lot of the money is being pumped into security, which could be pumped into other areas of development.
Yeah, no, we agree that there must be a serious factor there, just that we have not done a formal study of this. I don't know if my colleague want to comment on that aspect. I don't think it.
Okay. Could you repeat the question?
The question is, how are homicides and other crimes affecting the state of the OECS economy? Has there been a study done, a collective? I know we have our own national issues to deal with, but...
The answer, my colleague said, is that no, we have not yet done an OECS study to determine the impact. The United Nations, I think the Office of Drugs and Crime would have done several studies, longitudinal. It would have reflected that the Caribbean region, by and large, has become a violent society. The data goes back all the way to before 2010. And of course, wherever there is crime of every significant nature, it presents itself as a constraint to development and opportunity. It impacts upon socioeconomic life in ways that would not be helpful. And it's for that reason that we have to provide the resources to fight. And while it's true there always will be competing demands on the state for resources, law and order comes first in a real sense, because the state has always to maintain the capacity to good order, good governance, and peace and safety of the society. And that then drives. Would we wish that we didn't have to spend so much money on our security? We would always wish that, because as I say, there are always competing demands on the budget. But given the importance of that, given the fact that we have to prevent our societies from becoming failed states, from becoming societies where the reckless persons who are engaged in criminal activity take a predominance over the society, we have to continue to invest resources to keep our nation safe, just as we continue to invest to ensure the health of our people, just as we continue to invest to meet the evolving needs for an education system that is reflective of the expectations of our people.
Let me just add, while there's not been a formal study, we know that a lot of the incidents of criminal activities really among the young population, and therefore recognizing that, even without a formal study, I know some countries there have been a number of initiatives aimed at helping, programs aimed at empowering young people and giving them opportunities. There in Grenada case, we have had a rehabilitation center helping young people who transgress with the law, giving them a second chance and providing education and training and opportunities. And that center, in fact, even the government of St. Lucia recently sent a team down to look at what Grenada has done. And it's been pretty successful. There's been an Imani program where thousands of young people are on to job training program in the private sector and the public sector. And we're looking at the exit system where they can empower themselves to give them opportunities. In fact, what we had noticed was, in most cases, most of the young people involved in the program were mainly young girls. We still were not capturing enough young men, and we know that's where the problem is. So what we have created is what we call an Empower program, where we go on the blocks and get the young men involved into things that they want. You're not going to ask them to go and do O-levels and so on. Some of them don't want to hear that. But they might be interested in some fishing activities, some agricultural activities. So we empower them in the areas of their own interests. Some are interested in becoming some mechanics or carpenters, masons, or whatever they are. But we believe that some of these programs are working, and we believe that's where we have to go. So, but I honestly believe maybe we need to look at a formal study, as you indicated, to know more specifically about the problems that we see. Governor, you want to add something?
Okay. Just to add a correction. There was a quite significant study in 2007 by the World Bank. I was there at the time, so I recall it distinctly. Crime and Causes, Consequences in the Caribbean. I think it was called, a title. And it flagged the issue that it was an emerging problem. And it was looking at homicides per 100,000, or homicides per capita, homicides in our region. And that was, 12 years ago. So it probably needs updating. I think IDB, the American Development Bank, has since done additional work. So I'm not aware of an OECS-specific study, you're probably correct there, but I just wanted to recall the World Bank study at the time.
Okay, one more question.
Okay, folks. Reminder that you're listening to excerpts from a media conference which was held right after the conclusion of the 93rd meeting of the Monetary Council of the ECCU. Okay? The next question that was asked: has Scotia Bank given any reason why they are leaving the region? Prime Minister Mitchell.
Well, as far as I know, they have not stated the exact reason why they're planning to leave. We could have our own suspicion and our own speculation as far as those reasons are concerned. I think the governor did point out that a number of regulatory issues and the whole question of some of the risk that these banks are facing, we're seen as a small financial area of the world, and some of them may think that if they are caught in any one specific incident, the cost they certainly outweigh the risk with the cost involved. So I think they're thinking of their own interests. That's how I see it, and I think that's the feeling of most members of the Monetary Union, that they just don't see us worth the risk of what the world is facing at this particular time, and given some of the big stick that we are seeing coming down on us, with one given time, you blacklisted all our region and a matter, and they couldn't even explain why they did it. So facing those risks and the banks involved in deciding why should I, face those consequences that we see coming. So as I said, it's speculation on our part, and maybe we are quite correct. But that's what we have, how we see it. I don't know if any member want to comment on further on this. I think basically that's what you can say. I don't see.
Well, let me just say quickly, they said to us, because we asked, compliance costs. So the very point you made, risk reward. By the way, I don't know if you saw the announcement that, I mean, it's public, so I could say Scotia announced its withdrawal from El Salvador earlier this week. So it's not unique to the ECCU. But as the chairman said, that's the issue. So they did say that to us when we asked them the question.
All right. I want to put a little smile on your face, okay? So at the end of the next segment, I want you to be right where you are, because we're going to let loose Allan Bierzynski on you as he appeared on this past week's edition of Good Day Grenada. However, final segment from the ECCB. Just before the press conference ended, there was another question related to money laundering. And it was right after that that the hot issue of Venezuela and Petrocaribe came to the fore. I want you to listen carefully.
Just going back to one of my questions in relation to the sale of Sagicor, when I asked if there were any concerns about the whole too big to fail issue in the insurance sector, if you could address that. And are there any concerns that the new international anti-money laundering, anti-tax evasion regulations can basically wipe out the offshore financial sector for some of the countries in the ECCU? A lot of people, like Nevis, it accounts for a large chunk of the annual revenues for some of the Eastern Caribbean governments.
I mean, I'm sure the members of Council can speak to this issue. Our countries have been under enormous pressure over the last few months, going into their parliaments, addressing this issue. And frankly, delaying some of our own legislation because they had to give priority attention to this very matter. It is clear that the intent is to eliminate or obliterate the International Financial Services Center. I mean, I think that's pretty clear for all to see. In terms of insurance, we are always concerned about the large firms, and I know the insurance regulators have been looking at our largest firms. So you mentioned Sagicor. Of course, Sagicor is a dominant provider in our space, so they do look at Sagicor. There are others as well. But absolutely, the regulators are paying attention and are encouraged to continue to keep a very vigilant eye on our dominant providers.
As we see it, as you know, historically, money used to be going from one sector of the world to another sector. And I think the intention is to make sure that there is no even slight reversal of this. I think you have to put it in that term. And we in Grenada, for example, we almost don't have much of our offshore sector left. And I think that's the intention of what is taking place. The big stick is being wielded appropriately on us, and that's one more reason why we have to unify our position on almost every issue now, because without that united approach, we're not going to be able to cope with what's coming down on us.
Somewhat related to this, and I'll actually direct this question to the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. Considering the vibrancy of the Citizenship by Investment Program, do you fear that this same fate that is being meted out to the offshore sector may very well happen to the CBI program, specifically for St. Kitts and Nevis? On the note of blacklisting, I'm going to raise a probably a controversial subject, and that is of Venezuela. We know that countries in the Eastern Caribbean have a really good relationship, diplomatic ties with Venezuela, have been receiving assistance from Venezuela, but we've been made to understand that there have been some difficulty in Venezuela, for lack of a better word, transferring funds to countries that they have obligations to because of the sanctions, the international sanctions that have been meted out to them by the United States and other places. Banks are not accepting money coming from Venezuela. How are the countries, or how are countries dealing with this, trying to circumvent this and actually continue to have these relationships without having to encounter these roadblocks? And on that note as well, the issue of Petrocaribe and the loans that have been meted out to countries in the Eastern Caribbean, is the bank, well, for lack of a better word, concerned in terms of the high levels of indebtedness to Venezuela, also considering what's happening now in the country and the geopolitics that's being played in that area?
You've said many things, and I'm not sure where the question comes, but I will attempt to deduce. Specifically in relation to the CBI programs. The CBI programs are now a world phenomenon. They are in the Caribbean. They are in Europe, Malta, Cyprus, one time Portugal. The US has a form of economic citizenship program. Canada, and all of these at least, Quebec has. And what we are seeing really is an effort to reduce the space of developing countries to get into activities that larger countries by and large have now found some advantage. And the story is the same whether we are dealing with CBI or we are dealing with profit evasion mechanisms, the BEPS, or we are dealing with the blacklisting. Because by and large, there is no common application of the rules across all countries. And you're having, just as in colonial times, power and might dictating. Those who have the power set the rules. You can't tell them how to apply the rules. And in fact, they tend to be almost capricious in the manner in which rules are being set, standards are being imposed, and the goalpost is being changed ever so rapidly. So at one particular moment in time, certain types of entities in the offshore sector was not of interest to them. And then suddenly that would become of interest. We have been fighting this battle in the Caribbean region for a very long time. The blacklisting goes back many, many years. And we fought that battle together as a Caribbean region united maybe 10, 15 years back. It would have been around then. And we now have all these other challenges which we must fight together again. Bring a common organization or grouping to address these. We had the circumstances and instances where in December, St. Lucia is fighting to meet deadline, Barbados is fighting to meet deadlines, St. Kitts and Nevis fighting to meet deadline. Almost each of us, all of us fighting to meet these deadlines. Who determine the deadlines? Those with the power. So we are dealing with a lopsided development agenda which challenges the pathway for development to be self-determined. Once upon a time, it was well accepted that with regard to fiscal matters, that was the purview of a sovereign state. You choose whether you want it to be high or low tax jurisdiction. And if you were low, that was seen as a welcome sign, according to the supply siders. Not now anymore. You are now being punished as things evolve for being a low-tax jurisdiction. This is what this is about, that you are competing and you're now being asked by persons powerful in the international marketplace to almost become the tax collector for them. So you must report on their citizens in your jurisdiction, and you must ensure that they have that information so that they can impose tax on them. And you do that, as it were, at your own cost. And that is significant. And that requires that we in the region be very sensible and sensitive in the response, because at times we get carried away in propagating an agenda that is inimical to our own interests. So when we hear about blacklisting, we make a parade in the press that our countries are being blacklisted without understanding the philosophy behind that blacklisting and how that creates a negative for our development agenda, which will later come to humbug all of us. The rules are no longer fair, and the rules are being changed by those who determine them, and there is no self-evaluation and self-regulation. It's almost like long before we were born, with the mercantile rules, somebody determined that you must just go raw sugar, never develop any industries around it. And we came and we lived through that. And eventually that meant that neither banana in Dominica or sugar in St. Kitts could become a profitable area of engagement, because we never developed the associated support network and industry to sustain those. That is part of the challenge which we face, that make government and governance even more difficult nowadays than when my colleague first started, and he has been around a very, very long time. So you see how things are changing and how we have to really find the principles. And that brings me to Venezuela, because what we have been attempting to do, we have no guns, no arms, basically to show. We can't put a line in the sand and say, well, if you pass this, then we are going to do certain things. What we have attempted to do is to bring some constructive engagement to the conversation, that where our interest lies in peace within the region, and to harness the international principles to which member states of the UN have long been committed. Non-interference in member states, that we must keep sacred the territorial integrity of member states, unless, of course, the Security Council would make some prescription in relation to that. That we must abide by rule of law and the constitutional order. And we have put those squarely to each player and actor with which we have come. And they have stood the test of time. When we deviate from those long cherished principles, we create a problem for ourselves. Because when you move from principle, it becomes something else at play. It could be power at play. It could be position at play, where you neither have power nor position in the international political marketplace. What you have, principles which you must articulate, and rational actors listening and hearing can be persuaded to that. That is what we are attempting to do in our policy positions with respect to the Venezuela situation.
Colleagues, I want to take this opportunity to thank you all from the press. I myself do have to get out of here soon, because the airport has now called me. I had a flight to Miami. But just to make one additional point, the problem, as well articulated by my colleague here, is so significant, because there is no aid coming from anybody now, you know. We are trying to work things for ourselves without any help. And the little we're trying to do, we are trying to be blocked. And yet there's people, we are expected to cope with all the international rules, which is so unfair. And that's why absolute unity in the forces, we must never be seen as going off on our own individual countries. We are too small to cope with this world order. We need absolute unity, and we are not, as a country, we're not going to win on every issue. Grenada will never win and be seen as successful in every single issue that CARICOM takes. But we have to still be united. We might be able to benefit from 7 decisions, but 3 others will not be. But sometimes I get impression some of us want to win on every single one, and they expect the rest will not be able to do so. It doesn't work so. Colleagues, thank you very much for being here from the Media House this evening.
Okay, I'm still here. I'm still here. I was just getting my second mug of cinnamon tea this morning. Folks, thank you very much. Thank you very much for staying with us. Margaret says, yes, there are CBI programs around the world. Your problem in the Caribbean is your lack of proper regulation and screening of applicants. Your willingness to accept the dregs from the bottom of the barrel is what has placed the region in jeopardy. You guys behave as though your mouths are on the ground, says Margaret. That's telling them. Teleman G. McEachwan, wow, I haven't seen that name before. McEachwan says, lots of generalization. Give us an example of a rule that has hurt. Yeah? Somebody caught on to that. Okay, Pilgrims, I'll tell you what. Hold on. Lydia James says, George, I'm also having cinnamon and ginger tea too. Combined? I haven't tried them combined, but if you think it's a good idea, I certainly will. Let's take another little break here, and we'll come back with a chuckle. Hang in there.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing.
A commemorative postage stamp.
So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
regarding that last piece we played, Andreas St. Bernard Mitchell says, even when there are clear red flags, when some vetting is done, it's wink, wink, and turn a blind eye. Where is Charles Liu? I haven't heard that name mentioned in a while, Andrea, but thanks a lot for bringing that up. And Lydia James says, yes, she can combine, or I can combine cinnamon tea and ginger. Okay, now pilgrims. Now. This next piece is either going to put a smile on your face or bring a tear to your eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, an excerpt from last Thursday's edition of Good Day Grenada with Mr. Allan Bierzynski. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, and happy Valentine's Day to you and your viewers and listeners.
I told my listeners this morning I want to find out how a retired executive like Mr. B is going to be celebrating his Valentine's Day, if you don't mind, if it's not too...
Well, I will get to that because I have had the opportunity to listen not just to the GIS National Report, but also to the GBN News. But I'll start with you. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again is not something you want to suggest to somebody who is doing skydiving.
Okay. I did it. I've done it once, and it worked. So I don't have
Precisely.
Precisely. Okay.
No. I am not prone to participate in negativity, and I was listening to you earlier, and the comments that you've been reading suggest to me that people are not entirely happy about the current state of affairs. But I am necessarily a positive person in my outlook.
Okay.
So I've been reading between the lines. So, for example, when the IMF reports their satisfaction with the progress that has been made, and you see photographs of them smiling with the best finance minister in the region, or for the world, as far as I know. I am prepared to take away the positive aspects of this, and I'm not going to pay excessive attention to those people who want to know why we still have poor and vulnerable, and why we have to have social programs, and why we have to be searching for funding to prepare for the next climate events so that we'll be climate resilient and all of that. Surely, and I've made the point before, if our citizenship by investment program is doing as well as has been reported, the National Transformation Fund is supposed to be awash with money. Now, when I say awash, I'm not suggesting that any sort of laundering has been involved, because I'm certain that the necessary due diligence has been put in place. But nevertheless, it seems passing strange to me that Ambassador Dr. Angus Friday and Senator the Honorable Simon Steele should be still looking for funding when they're promoting the rollout of this climate resilience and this smart city. And the truth is, I find the jargon overwhelming. So I find it refreshing when I listen to an honest politician, perhaps the only honest politician in Grenada, because the Honorable Delma Thomas was explaining certain recent developments in the SEED program. To tell you the truth, I haven't researched it, so I don't know what the SEED program is about, except that it seems to wish to address the needs of the poor and vulnerable. Now, she explained that they have computerized the process so that in the past, and I'm merely repeating what my comprehension was of her address, which was on the news. It appears that in the past, individuals could have gone to their local constituency office or to a parliamentarian or to some official involved in the administration of the program and managed to get themselves onto the program to receive assistance when in fact they were not necessarily eligible for said assistance. Now, this is an honest politician. She has described the essence of the corruption that she has presided over. And now she is prepared to put a stop to it because now the computer will do it. Now, this raises another issue, of course, because I grew up when we had no computers. And so when computers came along, I was one of the generation who was taught that what a computer does is to process raw data quicker than humans can.
Garbage in, garbage out.
There you go. So if the Honorable Minister expects that the computer is going to do the work and correct the corruption that she so aptly described, poor thing, she has to, as the saying goes, wheel and come again. Now, in the context of wheeling and coming again, we get into culture. I am appalled at the manner in which we seem to accept that convicted criminals should be allowed to perform in Grenada. We already have enough convicted criminals who are applying to practice law. Leave it at that. But why should Mr. Buju Bantan, or whatever he is, a convicted criminal, be part of any show being promoted in Grenada? Let him stay in Jamaica or wherever. He may be welcome. But he should not be welcome in Grenada. People like that we don't need because they don't present a positive image. Having said that, on the question of image, I don't know how we can be promoting individuals who have charges pending against them for possession of a machine gun, not a revolver, you know, not an automatic pistol, and a machine gun. No, something is wrong. No, so let us move on now. And all of this is in the news. Let's get back to this question about the seed program, because I've learned something new. And this is when you were asking me about retirement. I have discovered that I am asset rich, but income poor. I have to admit that I had to listen about 3 times before I understood what it was that was being communicated or attempting to be communicated. But the reality is that there will be a lot of people my age who are asset rich and income poor, because when they retire, what they thought was a constitutionally guaranteed provision, and is now before the court, has to be negotiated, demonstrated for, argued against, while the people who have suddenly taken up strong positions regarding the inability of government to pay 25% advance payment on pension. You notice I will not say gratuity because this is the root cause of the problem, a simple English word. So, the 25% advance payment on pension, the government is unable to pay it, even though not all of the employees are retiring on the same date. And in the context of the IMF having just said, what a wonderful job we have done. I have never been able to understand government accounting. 2 years ago, I attended a presentation by the special advisor in the Ministry of Finance, who is on secondment from the CDB. And I asked some simple questions. And the simple answers I got essentially indicated that government accounting is different to the accounting that I know. So the government accounting records their receipts, it records their payments, and let's forget about the liabilities. Let's forget who we didn't pay. Let's forget who owes us. I mean, this is a simplification, but this is my understanding of it. So this is why when they do their half-year report, they are able to repeatedly report these massive surpluses. No, I shouldn't say massive. To report surpluses. And then 3 months later, you see they go to Parliament for a supplementary appropriations bill to legitimize the expenditure that they undertook, which had not been previously approved. It really is farcical. It reminds me of what is going on now in Trinidad with our representatives. I believe we have 5 artists from Grenada who have gone through to the final. Notice I said final because there's only one of this international Soca Monarch competition. Now, much laughter has emanated from the fact that the Trinis are complaining about these Grenadians, but the Trinis are the ones who made it international Soca Monarch competition. But there's one particular artist, and his song urges people to pick up something and run with it. I remember some years ago when our ambassador Tal Pri had something about trees in the West Indies. And from Vandom down through River Road, when people came down to show, every peace tree, country, bush, whatever it is, was rooted up. The place was denuded. These are people who could be employed as debushers. Just play the music for them. Trees in the West Indies. So now we have a reprise of this, except this time it is pick up something and run with it. And a senior police officer in Trinidad has come on the news to caution revelers that while they may enjoy the tune, leave the message where it is. Because one corn soup vendor had his apparatus removed from him. And as the cop said, if it hadn't been returned, then this would have been theft of property. Apparently, another gentleman was attending a function with his girlfriend when she was removed from his presence. And the cop said, well, if she had not been returned safely, then those responsible could have been charged with kidnapping. The mere fact that she was picked up and ran away with constitutes assault on the person. But the best part of it was, apparently a caller inquired of the cop whether he knew a woman by the name of, let's say, Ruby. I can't confirm that it was Ruby. But nevertheless, the cop appeared to be taken aback and was flustered by the question. Whereupon the caller attempted to assist him by saying, Ruby is my wife, and stop interfering with my wife. Leave her alone. Don't pick her up and run with her kid. So it just goes to show, when you are involved in the culture, leave the culture one side before you go on TV, before somebody knows what you're picking up and what you run away with. Yeah. A word to the wise.
You're done. You're done?
Yes, yes.
Mr. B, you make it awfully difficult for me to sit here with a straight face on a Thursday morning. Very difficult. And obviously not just me, because while I'm listening to you here and trying to stifle my laughter, there are people out there on Facebook who are posting some comments. I don't know if you're monitoring Facebook, but I'm going to share some of the stuff with you. Peter Bishop says, I love the way Allan plays with words. Donna Joseph says, Mr. B, I could give you the biggest hug and shake hand on this point that the honest lady spoke about, because the computer would only put out what is entered in the system. That's part of what Donna says. Donna also says, ha ha ha, thanks for the laughter, Mr. B, and your idea. It's a brilliant one. Maybe the Ministry of Work should take your idea of invigorating the debushers with that sun. Huh? She also says here, Mister, you have just made my Wednesday morning. Then
Thursday.
Donna, it's Donna, it's Thursday morning, Donna. Please. All right, let me get to the others. George, T.F. Richard says, George, just a quick question for Mr. B. From a business point of view, what's the possible backlash with the implementation of the ban on single-use plastic bags? Are the prescribed bags placed under the zero VAT commodities so as to save the final costing to the consumer?
It's been a while, but when I left, the tax structure was not favorable. I don't know if changes have been made. I rather doubt it.
Okay. Peter Bishop says, Allan is a classic. Ryan says, good day. But AB got an increase there. Allan, you not Allan, Ryan. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to try that one again. Donna says, thanks, George. I'm laughing so much I actually forgot the days of the week. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. That's an easy cop-out. Okay, I think that's it there for... oh, hold on a sec. Margaret Francis says, all another farce to line their pockets. But I got good news for them. Donors are fed up and demanding accountability. Dennis Clark says, money! It's commenting. Oh, by the way, Donna says that you are her favorite guest on the program. You know what you're talking about? You're fueling this guy, Donna. Please. I mean, I'm sitting here trying to keep a straight face as this man talks about serious issues, and you're talking about favorite. Hey, AB, obviously there are people out there who didn't know that you have retired. Sharon says here, Sharon Elizabeth Roberts says, retired? Mr. B retired? What will Hubbards do? Apparently she didn't know you were retired.
Which means that the succession plan has been extremely effective and seamless.
Ah, that's one way of looking at it, sir. That's one, and I'm glad because...
Well, since I was intimately involved in it, I am pleased that it has worked so well so far.
There you go. There you go. Another plus to look at. It gives you the time to mess around here with me on a Thursday morning, doesn't it? Huh?
Yeah, Thursdays.
That was deliberate, Allan. That was deliberate. Amy, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. We're going to take a little break now. I certainly hope you do have a good weekend. By the way, did you enjoy your independence and all of that?
Yes, I was with a couple of older friends up at Belmont Estate.
Oh, okay.
Far from the madding crowd.
Far from the what crowd?
Far from the madding crowd.
Whatever happened to the maddening crowd?
No. Google it. Far from the madding crowd.
Far from the madding crowd.
Google it.
Okay, we'll go Google it. AB, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I look forward to seeing you next week. You have a great weekend.
Okay, bye now.
Take it easy. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I don't know what to say about Allan, except that when they made him, they threw the mold away. Priceless. AB, priceless. On Facebook, Linda Cooper says, Allan is speaking the truth, but seriously entertaining. Ain't that the truth, girl? Ain't that the truth? And on Rumble Chat here, Good Morning Grenada says, George, that smile on your face says it all. Stay off, Boujou. You are wrong, very wrong. Allan, Good Morning Grenada wasn't too crazy about what you said about Boujou Benton. And then the person goes on to say, George, I love that smile. I love the eyes that go with that beautiful smile. Hey, thank you very much. By the way, on a more serious note, just going back a little bit here, just before we did the piece with Allan, we were listening to the people from the ECCU. Bob Marishow says, finally, the Caribbean is at the intersection of the geopolitical dilemma of politics and economics. They are in the crosshairs of the powers that be. I think the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis articulated very well. How they handle it would determine the viability of the islands. Hope they would rise to the challenge. As we say in Grenada, beggars are not choosers, and a hungry man is an angry man. Be aware, there are social problems lurking on the horizon if more pressure is put on the Caribbean. Pilgrims, just about time to put, I'm hungry. You know, the cinnamon tea here, cinnamon tea alone ain't gonna cut it. Need to put something in there, stuff the holes a little bit. I'm gonna leave you with a parting word from Chronicles 28. One verse, chapter 20. And I hope this provides you with a little bit of encouragement to carry you through the coming week. 1 Chronicles 28, verse 20 says, be strong and courageous, and do it. Do not be afraid, and do not be dismayed. For the Lord God, even my God, is with you. He will not leave you or forsake you until all the work for the service of the house of the Lord is finished. Yeah. Think about that a few times during the coming week. On that note, Georgie Porgy's going to pull the plug here with thanks and appreciation for you keeping me company this morning. Enjoyed it, as always. Greatest job in the world. Thanks so much, my dear friends. And please, remember, join us every weekday morning at 9 o'clock for Good Day Grenada. Until such time, I'm going to send you God's blessings and pray that your dreams come true. Okay?